So I have the recording.
I'm stuck with this every day, so I don't
Yeah.
know.
So normally, upskill is like sharing knowledge with colleagues, but I found that like it's only or it's mostly about like things that we do at work, and I want to kind of go to the next step. So I have started with my hobby project, Hessdalen, and then I created this developer program. So now I have like a good reason to work on something, and I find it interesting. So I like to share, I like to discuss, I like people to join this. And then actually, if you go to this developer program, you can contribute as well. I mean, I had this quote from Einstein: the only source of knowledge is experience. You can read, you can study, but you need hands-on. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with the developer has done. Okay. So we have a number of projects. We have a student from Germany, from Würzburg. He's going to be an exchange student in Trondheim, and he's working on these, what you see, these two cameras. They have been put up in Hessdalen, and behind it is an AI model being trained. So uh, I know that we're going to be talking more to him and how to do that model training. We have been looking into Bob, which is a system for tracking things in the sky. We have a system, open source system to map things on the map on like what you see here is like UFO appearances in Norway. But I don't know how to do that. But now I have one on developer program that has showed me how to do it. Rainer is the one that is behind this little logger thingy. I don't know much about that, but it shows you that it's not only software, it's also kind of hardware. You to join this, it is all kind of stuff you can get into. And of course, my part is mostly to work on the social media, and I need to make a web page. Last time I had a presentation from Sanity, which is a headless CMS, also very interesting. So if you want to make a web page, go and have a look at that. And I'm also, next time I hope to present something about FileMaker, which is a no-code, low-code system, which is also another buzzword. And then next comes Jeffrey, because now it's like, how do you use AI? And I think the whole reason for this was because we're going to start up a scientific project in early 2025. So we have now a university in Portugal and the university in Norway in Trondheim, and so we have a lot of material that we need to read. And I was thinking, like, how am I going to get into this? And that's why I was asking Jeffrey, is there a way we can actually use the AI to have kind of a domain expert and then ask it the things that we need to get from all these articles? So maybe he will explain more about that. You can take over, Jeffrey. How do you do that?
All right, I will share my screen here. All right.
Yeah.
So you should be able to see it now. Are you able to see it?
Yes, yes. Can I make it
All
full
right.
screen?
It's blurry.
It's blurry still. So let's see what happens.
Oh, sorry, it's good on my end here.
Oh,
Let's see, maybe
not
can I
here.
stream at a higher quality?
A good question. Um,
Let me see
Maybe
if I
it
can
just takes time.
setting.
It's probably my screen. How do I make it pop out? This one?
No, it's just showing his screen.
Hmm?
It's just showing his
Just
full
that's the
screen.
screen. Okay.
But it's something like if you see the
I
thing
will
is
click this
needed, it's
one.
just something that he needs to unlock.
I need to.
Unlock like but on his side.
Is it on his
I
side?
think it's intentionally blurry.
What do I need to
Oh,
do
it
on my
looks
end?
like. That's weird.
I think maybe if you're using two screens.
Oh, yeah, I am using two screens.
Yeah, I think maybe it's on the other screen.
Oh, okay, that's probably what
Oh,
the issue
okay.
was.
Okay.
wrong screen. There we go. You should be able to see it now.
Let's see.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay. So, hey, nice to meet everybody. My name's Jeffrey. I met Fred on Project Hessdalen, and I'm really excited. I've learned quite a bit and showed him many things and had many discussions with him. And I think that not only for the project, but for scientific research in general, um, artificial intelligence, large language models and vision models and soon to be audio engines are going to really take a hold of research. And when you combine that with the just exponential increase in research, it's going to be a needed tool. It won't even be something that you prefer to use. We'll have to analyze these large data sets and huge amounts of research papers that are field. So a little bit about me. I'm 39 years old. I live in the States. I live in Utah, in Salt Lake City. I work for myself. I've been working on several projects for a few months now. I started my own company at the beginning of the year to do AI research, and I, in the last 7 months or so, 6 to 7 months, have just absorbed as much information as I can about coding, about the latest AI research, the latest scientific research. I have a couple other side projects that I'm working on that don't have too much to do adjacent to what I'm working on here, but are actually incredibly benefiting from the use of the tools that I've designed. So I'm assuming that most people are going to know the first couple things I cover, but just in case, the presentation is just going to go over what Gen AI is, the role that it plays in Project Hessdalen, how we can use vision models, complex data set analysis, and then bringing it back to what I've been working on. How can we use AI in academic textual analysis, and is there a better way to do it than the ways that are being used right now? So I'm sure most of you know this, but generative AI obviously is the rage right now. It's simply a subset of AI that creates text, images, music, videos, and again, soon to be an audio engines as well, not just speech, but actual complete audio, ambient effects. I'm sure a lot of people saw the OpenAI demo, and that was, I think, about a month ago, and it was quite impressive what they're working on. And then, of course, the Project Hessdalen that we're on right now is going to benefit quite a bit from it. So I've listed a number of use cases here, but there's many beyond this. And the key thing to highlight for me right now, what I'm noticing is the interdisciplinary integration. So being able to take multiple resources and have the AI decide which ones it needs to use. And then based on that, in my opinion, it's able to infer things and deduce things that sometimes can be missed, especially after a few people, a few close friends and close colleagues. And it's absolutely stunning what can be done with the integration of academic work in these large language models. So I'm going to go over a few things here. And if anybody has any questions at any time, feel free to raise your hand. I'll be glad to answer. So one of the biggest things that I've noticed in the last 12 months of the AI surge has been the increase in the ability of the vision models. So vision models are essentially, computer vision models. They're basically designed to understand visual information the same way that large language models do, though through different types of neural networks. Everybody kind of knows go into ChatGPT or Midjourney and ask to make an image. And that's great. I've used it quite a bit for making images, but the ability to classify things, to detect things. I have a little Raspberry Pi that has a camera on it, so when I'm not home, I can see what my dog's doing because I don't want my dog to get into trouble when I'm not home. So vision models, I think, are incredibly impressive, not only for generation, but for analysis. So with that being said, I'd like to do just a short comparison here. So this is an image from Project Hessdalen. This is from, I think, 2023. And it was just a frame of a video that I saw that caught my attention. Obviously, you can see there's a kind of a strange anomaly in the bottom right, and then in the center left. So I ran this through ChatGPT, and it gave a great answer. Like this is not a bad answer at all. The timestamp coordinates describes the lights in the sky, and it's good. It's good. So what I've been finding out, though, is that with a little bit of iterative prompt refinement and some examples, so one of the things that I've learned that I think it's actually on the OpenAI website, one of the most important things I've learned is with vision analysis, give it an example of what you want it to output as in terms of the template of the structure. So I did that, and I compared it to the response. And as you can see, and I just won the, not used to that. I apologize. What is going on here? Hold on one moment. I apologize. So what we can notice from the GPT-4o API versus ChatGPT is that with a little bit of prompt generation, and a good website to use is the one that I've linked at the bottom there, by creating an in-depth prompt, a very complex prompt, and setting the example of what you want that output to look like, you can have incredibly in-depth details of image analysis. So in the case here, this is just one frame. So I've done this with a couple videos of the project that Fred and I are on, and it can do this for literally every frame of a video, which might seem like a little bit overkill, but when you're looking at, say, anomalous things in the sky, every single frame does matter. The position matters, the behavior matters, the colors matter, and then of course after that you also have to give it some extra information, like, what's your confidence in this? Do you have any additional insights? Can you infer any other information from this image? Oh, I apologize. This is my Apple mouse that keeps doing this. I'm going to switch to my regular mouse. That's the problem. Okay, so that will not happen again. So with that being said, imagine taking 100 videos, and we'll say they're 30 seconds each and 25 frames per second. Even though there is quite a cost associated with this, I as a researcher, I don't mind what the true capabilities of the frontier models are. And if we were to, say, create a script that analyzed videos like this frame by frame, you can see that there's tangible benefits to that compared to, putting it into ChatGPT, having the Python interpreter that's in GPT break down the frames, hope that it breaks it down correctly, because the Python interpreter with ChatGPT is not super consistent. So I use the API and the ability to, say, take 100 videos, 30 seconds each, 30 frames per second, and break down every single part of the video that you can, every single image, every single change in that video from frame to frame. The granularity of detail that you can get is absolutely wild. You could then take all that data and then put it back into a model. At that point, you could even make your own model. Probably would be more cost effective at that point since you have all the data. But using these frontier models, they really do outperform every time. I use a benchmark site that I've linked in the chat, and I put a message in the chat called LMSys. And LMSys benchmarks all the large language models, open and closed. And when you combine the prompting that's publicly available online with the ability of the API and not being restricted by the length that ChatGPT is going to choose, or maybe the, you're using an open source model and it doesn't quite have as much of that base knowledge, it doesn't have that trillion parameter base. So what you find is that when you compare it, and again, you can go to lmsys.org, it's an absolutely great site, and compare results from one LLM to another. And so what I've been doing is I've been taking things like this, and although you can't use images on that site, you can do textual analysis. And the models, specifically GPT-4o, and of course I was telling Fred today, as soon as I made this, a brand new Claude model came out today that surpasses GPT-4 in almost every single category. Chance to switch my APIs out. This is all based on GPT-4, but nonetheless, it's still incredibly impressive. The ability to have granularity is incredibly noticeable with the newest GPT class model. So when it breaks things down, you can continue having it break things down more and more. Now, the problem that people do run into is hallucinations. I think they're more of a feature than a bug, personally. But given that when you're analyzing scientific data, you can't really have that margin for error. And so I think the ability, and I'm going to say this word again, to be granular is going to be the difference in academic research in terms of using the frontier models versus the open source models, right? Or the open source models right now. And in addition to that, we've also been looking at complex data. So one of the things that kind of got my attention when I was reading about Hessdalen was the geomagnetic data. So just as an example, I have not done a super in-depth analysis of all the coordinates. I was using the closest station to the anomalies that I was finding here. And this one is actually in the States. This was a pretty significant event that occurred. This was a public event that occurred on a base in the United States. It was a public event. There were reports that had to be filed about it. So of course I said, okay, well, this is a public event. Yeah, I have the date, I have the timestamp, I have the location. So I simply went to SuperMag, which I've linked in the chat. I downloaded the netcdf file, which is the format that the data comes in, and then I plotted some events, some anomalies, and sure enough, whether it's in Hessdalen or in the States or in Turkey, what you notice is that a lot of these events have significant correlations to magnetic changes, geomagnetic changes. So very interesting additional data set to use, in this case on the project, on Project Hessdalen, but could also be used for many scientific purposes. The other things that I've been playing around with that I didn't really want to link everything here, but some of the additional data that I've been looking at, and this goes back to kind of taking a cross-disciplinary approach to it, as weather, gravitational data from NASA, soil data, mineral analysis, satellite images, astronomical data, biodiversity data, seismic, energy data, even transportation data. It's very pertinent to this project. And then social media data, that can tell you quite a bit. So I think what I'm trying to convey here is that the ability that generative AI has to allow multiple different disciplines to come together to solve problems is one of the, in my opinion, the greatest advancements in science. Because up until now, all that you have to do is go and look at all the various journals, which we'll look at in a second, and you can see that just being an oncologist, it would be nearly impossible to spend your time learning how to study astronomy and read astronomy articles, and then maybe you're really interested in weather and you want to read peer-reviewed data about weather. And unfortunately, and I'll cover this in a moment, the time that researchers and academics, professors, students spend on research is crazy. One of my friends was telling me a few years back that they were spending easily a third of their time reading research when they were getting their, I think it was a biochem undergrad. But the ability to take this data and make it more accessible while still maintaining the integrity of the information, meaning the citations are there, the sources are backed up, there's multiple ways to verify it. That's what I think AI is really going to help with. It's going to speed up the process so that, yes, maybe you are an oncologist that researches for 60 hours a week. Maybe you are able to use this app and you do read additional data. And it will come together a bit more when I show you the app in a moment. So academic text analysis is really the heart of it. We're looking at right now 25 years of open access, which of course is the movement to allow open access to journal articles, which I think that is incredibly important, because there's a lot of people in the world that have an incredible amount of potential but may not have the resources to, say, go to archive and read for 3 hours a day, or go to MedPub and stay up on the latest articles. So, when you look at the amount of exponential growth in academic publications, it's staggering. It almost completely coincides with Moore's law. It's just the more capacity, the more compute we have, the more research we can do. So the curve that we're at it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I have conversations daily about whether or not we will have an AI plateau, and I'm not seeing it yet. I follow it day to day. I'm not seeing it yet. So with that assumption, my next assumption is that people are going to need a way to analyze either their domain or the domains they're interested in or adjacent domains, but they may not have the resources and time to do that. The researchers, this was according to the latest study I could find on Biomed, 234 hours a year, about an hour per article. And that's just, to me, I can't fathom being a researcher and reading 4 articles a day or 5 articles a day. It's just incredibly dense, though I'm very interested in the subject. So what I did was I kind of asked myself, is there a better way to do this? Is there something that we're missing here? And what I found was that just like the image analysis, there really was. Now, the image analysis that I showed you earlier was solely the OpenAI API. What I've done is I've created a resource that integrates all different types of disciplinary journals, everything from socioeconomic journals to scientific to medical. And what I've done is I've kind of benchmarked it against ChatGPT as well as all the other LLMs that are on the website that I've linked in the chat, LMSys. And I'll give you a couple examples here before we actually open it and get into it. So I asked the question, the first question was, hold on one second. First question was, how could studying the geomagnetic and gravitational anomalies during UAP events help in understanding their interaction with Earth's magnetic field? So pretty straightforward question, but one that all UAP researchers would probably want to know and understand. I'm an amateur in this field. I'm just starting to understand the various components and topics of it. So this was actually one that just wanted to understand from a very basic level. So for me, this answer was fine. This answer made sense. I understood it. However, I wanted to see, well, let's say that the depth and the amount of information that the AI had access to was exponentially increased in terms of academic resources. And so I created an app, and when you ask the same question in this app, it gives you a much more thorough answer, a much more scientifically grounded answer. In this case, there were 16 citations that I didn't show, but they're all academic peer-reviewed journals. And what's really interesting is that it doesn't necessarily use all the information that it reads, but it reads what it kind of what the word. There's some things that go on the back end that tell it, hey, search all these journals and then find this information that's pertinent. And much like the way a RAG system works, where you're retrieving that, it's retrieving it. It's across multiple domains, multiple journals, multiple, all peer reviewed and all legitimate sources. Everything can be traced back, verified, and what you get in the end is a much more thorough answer that's targeted towards somebody with a very, a much more in-depth, whatever the topic is that you're reading about. So in this case, it was, the gravitational and geomagnetic effects of UAPs. And we can see here that, there's a study in 2020 that talked about chiral transport in curved space-time via holography for gravitational anomalies. Now, for me, just to open it up and have an entire another conversation, but for somebody that's a researcher, a PhD, an academic, a student, this is incredibly useful because now you can take your data points. For example, let's say you want to cite the Chaos 7 model by Finlay in 2020. It gives you the link to that article, and then the citations are already there for you. So essentially, this isn't a quote from the article. This is the synthesis of the AI and its base knowledge, GPT-4's trillion parameters, academic information relevant to simply the question that you're asking. So it's not a RAG system, it's a little bit different, but in essence, it's the same thing. You're retrieving the pertinent information, the AI is then taking that into account, and it's creating a response based on its base layer plus all of the most relevant academic data. And so let's say you want to do a medical question. So one of my friends that I have is a nurse practitioner. She's in the psychiatric field. I said, give me the hardest question you can think of. So she asked me a question. I have no idea what most of it means. I since have learned, but essentially it's a very in-depth question about the roles and mechanisms of pruning, synaptic pruning in schizophrenia. Which of course is a mental illness, it's a medical condition. We don't understand all of it. We have a good understanding of it, but after my conversation with her, I could definitely tell that she had more knowledge after I showed her the response. So I'll show you the example ChatGPT answer, and it's rather good. It's not bad at all. It gives you some genetic factors. It goes over some of the more intricate details, gives you a little bit of a layman's explanation at the top, gives you the typical in summary ChatGPT closing paragraph. And it's not bad. But when you compare the answer that you get when you provide it with academic rigor, research, and in this case, some of these studies were from this year. So these are things that frontier models are not going to have in them yet. The frontier model for GPT, I think, is it's either March of this year or late last year, but it's not up to date. And to pull this data out and then create a response, you would have to use the search capabilities. So you would have to tell ChatGPT, search for Wang 2024 study on schizophrenia. And then you would have to pull that data. You'd have in the context window and question again and hope that it doesn't repeat the same response, which is not, for a researcher, that's not ideal. So what this does is in this case, there was 24 citations for peer-reviewed articles that it used to generate this answer. So in having a model use the immense amount of base knowledge that it has, that it's been trained on, in addition to having the most recent academic studies from legitimate websites. So this isn't some person that published one study one time. You can cross-reference everything, and you have to remember the AI is looking at the aggregate. It's looking at the whole thing. So it's just such a different experience from the folks that I've talked to that have used it, that are on the academic, the enterprise, the research student side of things. This is, in my opinion, what you want the response to be. And you shouldn't have to go to ChatGPT and ask 10 different ways to get this response, nor should you have to create your own model and feed it all of academia that's ever existed. It's just not realistic. So this is kind of a happy medium. So I'm really proud of what this is. I'm looking for people to test it that would like to use it and play around with it, provide feedback. And yeah, that's the app. It's called Brilliance. I'd like to demo it and show everybody how it works. I have it deployed on Streamlit now, which I also put a link to in the chat, which is a great platform for testing chat models and various LLMs across the board, whether it's Llama or OpenAI, it doesn't matter. It pretty much supports it all. So with that being said, I can take any questions, and if not, if there's no questions, I'd love to get your hardest questions that we can ask the Brilliance app, and yeah. All right, so this is Brilliance. You should be able to see it. And again, anybody that wants access to this, I will be happy to provide access to this. And you can use it as much as you want. Right now, it's set to retrieve a maximum, I think, of 25 journal articles to use per response. That can be altered if there is a topic that requires a much more, you know, a deeper complexity. If we need to look at math and physics and you know, not just across a couple domains, but maybe 5 or 6 or 7 domains, that's totally possible. So with that being said, does anybody have any questions that, like, not questions you would go to ChatGPT for, but like really difficult questions in your field of expertise? I'd be really interested to hear any questions from anybody.
See if we get any in the chat. Let me see, where's my mouse? You're talking about in their field of expertise?
Yeah, no, any field that you're interested in, any difficult question. You know, I feel like AI has been great, but the impression that a lot of people have is that the wall is there, the ceiling's hit, and it's only going to do so good. And after having NPs and a couple other people with high credentials in their field test this, I'm very confident that it can answer the most difficult questions. So really, I think this is going to be an incredible integration, and nobody's really doing it right now. And the researchers need it, the professors need it, the students need it. There's really no reason that nobody, you know, couldn't have done it yet. So, and this is only using, I think, about a dozen APIs, but there's the number of APIs for journal articles are much higher than that. I could make it 50, 100. So yeah, I'd love to hear if anybody has any difficult questions, any curious questions, anything that you think ChatGPT might not get right. I'd love to test it.
I can add something to that because I've been just reading about it. I have no questions, complex questions, but Google has created a white paper which is called GPQA, and it's kind of a complex question set to actually test machines. Answers that would take a PhD expert in the domain, like 34% of the answers he would be capable of answering. But actually the state-of-the-art large LLMs can answer up to 54. And the average humans is like 0 to 1%. So if you Google it, just GPQA graduate level Google Proof, maybe you can find a really complex questions of different fields. It was actually made by experts on different fields.
Yes.
You have can you pick a question from that site, or?
I can try to look for this,
Yeah.
but
I've
then
actually got it up right here. I can,
Okay.
let me see if I can find a good one here. Okay. Yeah, a lot of these are math based.
Yeah, and they have different fields in different areas. Basically, average human is not able to even understand. And academics are also like, I mean, they put people in Google search engine academic, and they ask them to research and find the answer to that. And only 34% of the questions are actually answered, even with the technological tools that they have.
Okay. Putting it to the test here.
Let's see. This is an interesting question. Trying to avoid the math because I haven't tested this on anything related to math. But, well, let's do this. Let's we'll make it more interesting here. So let's do this here. Hold on one moment. So this is the newest Claude model, so we might as well test it out. This is supposedly what can beat GPT-4 and everything. So let's ask it, synthesize an academic level question regarding.
Shouldn't you swap to a different model than the Sonnet? Is that a right one? Isn't it?
Yeah, man, it came out today. 3.5. Oh, yeah. It beats GPT-4 in every benchmark except math. Just came out like 12 hours ago. I know. I don't know why they would call Opus the top of the line and then Sonnet the middle and then release a Sonnet that's higher benchmark than Opus, but that's on Anthropic. So we'll ask it to synthesize an academic level question regarding the role that, hold on, I have this over here. One moment. Okay. Hold on, I have a list of questions here.
Huh?
Okay.
This is just now, basically.
Okay, so this is a good one. This was for my cardiologist friend here. So we'll ask it, how can machine learning models improve the prediction of heart failure outcome in patients with comorbid conditions? So not quite an impossible question for cardiologists to answer, but one that probably most cardiologists unfortunately wouldn't know. So let's take a look here. I mean, machine learning is so new. It's not a, I think it's understood by the people that understand it very well, but I think the majority of doctors are still learning how to use AI. They're learning about machine learning AI tools. They're using things like various research apps that are online that are great. They're supported by these large healthcare corporations, but I won't name the specific ones, but I've benchmarked this against those as well, and it tends to outperform everyone. I think it was 99 out of 100 times. So there's one time it didn't outperform it. And then I'm using multiple LLMs to benchmark the benchmark. So with this answer, it's clear that it has the latest data. I mean, it has studies from 22, 23, 24. And yeah, this is an incredibly dense explanation. And I'm not going to pretend to know what any of this means, because believe it or not, I'm not a cardiologist. But the evidence is pretty clear. So if you were to take this answer and you were to put it in to any other LLM, ask the same question and compare it, every single time the academic version will outperform the quality and the accuracy. So it's not simply that it's giving you a longer answer, it's actually providing you with more knowledge. And of course, one would expect that, having all these articles being analyzed. So these are all the articles that it read to get that answer. So you could see that the additional knowledge, like having a data set, not like a data store or something you're retrieving, but a data set of all of the specific pertinent topics to the question. So sometimes I will ask a question and it will look at articles that are related, but in a very, very loose way. And even doing that, it's still able to generate a coherent response that, as far as I know, every response I've tested has been accurate. Every single expert, every single SME, subject matter expert that's looked at a question that's been answered in their domain has just said, wow, this is so much more knowledge than I would ever get out of a frontier model, or even a local model. Is just not even comparable. So again, if anybody has any questions, I'd love to ask.
There's a question if you look in the chat now from the
okay.
line. Yeah.
Hard question. Okay, how can I read
Hard
calibration? Do you see PCI's express card? That's a very specific express card, but okay. We'll take a look here. All right.
And of course, a cat.
Gotta have the cat. I love
You need
cats.
a cat on the internet.
Cats are the best. They make everybody happy.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I'll put this answer in the chat so that everybody can have a record of it. But yeah, it looks like there's quite an in-depth. Oh, it went into code. I did not think it was going to do that. Interesting. Okay.
You wrote this.
I know. I've never had it spit out code though. That's really. I don't think I've ever asked it a coding-related question, to be honest. So yeah, I'll put this in the chat. I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, please put it in the chat. I think it's a little bit general, but I will have a look in parallel to the meeting and see if it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing there. Yeah, so this is a very specific question to a piece of equipment. So it might be like, this would be a situation when I would probably kind of word it more generally. It's difficult to use the academic research for such a model specific item. But it does look rather general. And I could definitely understand that given the specificity. Now, that doesn't mean though that we can't. So one of the interesting things I have running on my local version here, I'll run this real quick here. Hold on. One of the things that I've integrated into the local version is the ability to use your own files. And what this does is this would allow you to drop the manual in there. So then you could put the manual in and say, okay, here's the manual. Now let's ask that question. And now it's going to be able to not only use any academic research, but it will also have the ability to have your input, whatever is in your PDF, CSV, text, into the actual prompt. Okay, we've got another one here. What are the neurophysiological markers of ADHD symptoms? Okay, this is a good one. Actually, we'll do the other window here. Okay.
Because what I saw when you were demonstrating this is that I was thinking that the moment we have this scientific report that we're going to create on the Hessdalen lights and stuff like that, we could have it like on the side of the report. You can read the report and you can discuss with the report, and not only the report, but all the other scientific material about this subject domain.
Like giving the report an identity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for a researcher, that's invaluable because it allows them to do hypothesis testing, maybe new hypothesis generation. The ability here to use academic research is really just unlimited. It's really, I think I was showing Fred earlier, we were talking about what the, how can we use this for maybe something that's based on like socioeconomic benefits or a socioeconomic program. And sure enough, I showed him a question I had asked about, let's come up with a plan to fight childhood obesity. And it pulled articles from China, and it pulled articles from several countries about how they've treated their childhood obesity problems. And it creates a plan on these are the best actions that you should take in, I think in this case, I put here in Utah, to combat childhood obesity. And it used what's called the Public Library of Science as its predominant resource, which is this huge database of not just scientific articles, but lots of databases that I didn't even know. Like there's an education resource database that's all just papers on education. That's it. And so in combination with that and the papers from the different countries on obesity, it was able to tailor a plan on how to fight childhood obesity in Utah, which was quite impressive because with that data and with those citations, with 15, 20, 25, 30 citations, it becomes a lot more credible when you go to somebody and say, hey, let's look at this. Let's really analyze this from a multidisciplinary perspective. And that's again, I keep going back to that. That's what's impressed me so much about this is the variety of articles that it's choosing from. So lots of articles about ADHD, but then also not ADHD, just EEG asymmetry. And it goes, oh, okay, well, I need to use that one too. And so what you find when you start to look at the citations is that the creation of the answer, it's not a RAG. It's not like a customer service manual where you ask, what do I do when the customer says this? And then it spits out, a response that this is what you want to say to the customer per our company policy. Like that is a great use case. And I think that those models have numerous applications. Like they're going to be used for everything. I think Stephen was talking about that earlier. But the frontier models in tandem with academic research provide a complete new level of depth for the LLM experience. So yeah, that's pretty much what I had. And if anybody would like the link, I can add you to the Streamlit. Just send me the email that you would like me to add it to. And then when you go to the website, it will ask you to log in to Streamlit. And then from there, it will pull up the text box and ask as many questions as you would like. Keep in mind that while it is using the OpenAI API, meaning that it's not training on that data is not out in public, it's not ChatGPT. I would advise that this is all for research. Everything is logged. We're looking at everything. But I would really love if anybody wanted to test it or just have it in their back pocket in case there's a situation you come upon when ChatGPT doesn't do the job. I think this will be incredibly useful. I've given it to Fred, and I plan on giving it to people within the project. But I'd really like to have as many people use it as possible and just provide feedback. Use as many tokens as you want, as many questions. I really want to get feedback and show the possibilities of this.
You can, you say you would love a link. You can contact me and I will make sure you get. But you're also on Hessdalen now. So your mail is actually Jeffrey at hessdalen.org. Mine
Yeah.
is Fred at hessdalen.org. So I try to connect people using this developer.hessdalen.org, and the community where you showed up is actually on Discord, which is, of course, Discord at hessdalen.org.
Yes.
So,
That's
so that's where we met.
yes, exactly. And
Wow.
Fred, I know you've heard me say this probably 3 times. You're probably getting sick of me saying it, but I will say this again. This is the dumbest it will ever be.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
How do you see the application um, from a workflow perspective of how can I, as a person with no knowledge in a field, can start building up and scaling up till the point that I can actually develop a really complex question in the domain? Because I think right now, for me, it's like, yeah, you have an open prompt, but you don't know really how to ask or what to ask. Do you think the application by itself could help me to build up kind of a level of expertise to do that?
Got you covered. So what the app does, what it does, one of the things on the back end, I don't mind saying this, this is something that makes sense. I mean, this is public information. Bear with me 1 second here. So, sorry, getting an error on my other screen here. Bear with me 1 second if you could.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry about that. But yes, to answer your question, the prompt. So what happens when you put a question into this app, into Brilliance? It actually sends it to the AI and tells it what it's doing. It says, "Hey, I'm creating an academic-based response. Reword this user's response so that it makes the most sense to these APIs." And then I have several other things that it does. So essentially it rewords your response. That's what I'm saying. So
All right.
you can be a layman in a field and simply say, like with my friend that was the nurse practitioner, I think her question was like, what info relates to this? But then the question that I showed you was what the app actually reformed the question as. So that way it's using the AI to iterate your question. And then from there, that's when it starts hitting the APIs, is once it's reworded your question to an academic level.
Wow, that's impressive actually. It's like a prompt amplifier then, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And Junia is a great website too. I've linked that and I'll send the stack to Fred. It's a great website to get your prompts from. It's really, there's a number of them. But yeah, they're all online, and what you can do is you can kind of see, okay, if I put this in and the prompt refiner like Junia spits this out, what is it doing? How is it getting from A to B? And so you just give it an example, just like on OpenAI's website, where it says the best prompting practices, use an example response. So tell it how you want it to look when it changes the words. Give it just one example from Junia or OpenAI or whatever prompt generator you're using. And then from there, it's as simple as, okay, now my doctor that maybe they don't know how to use AI, and they're not super familiar with ChatGPT or otherwise, they can ask a question that's not worded the way that somebody that's been using AI for 2 years every day, say, would ask it. And that was something I took into account because I know that not everybody uses ChatGPT 24 hours a day. I'm kind of the oddball here. But this is a huge thing, and I don't know why OpenAI doesn't do this by default.
Yeah, but this is a big business opportunity actually.
Yes, absolutely. And right now it's strictly a pilot. I want people to test it, use it, provide feedback, see where I can improve it. Because there's a number of other things that happened on the back end too. But yes, it's rewording the question is very important because your professors, your PhDs, your students, like they're very busy people, enterprise people, very busy people. They don't have time to sit down and play with ChatGPT for 4 hours a day. It's just not feasible. And I think eventually it'll get there where all large language models will understand when you, and it kind of works like now, you can skip punctuation, you can misspell things, it knows what you're saying. But the key is to get it so it knows the intent. How does it know what you actually want? And that's what I'm trying to dial in here, is whether it's domain specific to medicine, science, UAP, community-based, whatever you're working on. I think there's an application for the integration of scholarly journals into every single response. And part of this is because I believe, and I won't go off on too much of a tangent here, but unfortunately, the level of academic integrity is just like people don't respect it as much. And I feel like every response that an AI gives you should cite how it got that response. You should not trust OpenAI to give you the right response. You should trust them to give you the sources that said how it got its response. And unfortunately, with OpenAI, they are closed. So the most we can come to that is this.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other questions from people listening? If not, I'm very happy with your presentation and the number of people that showed up. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I was super nervous. I just let everybody know I've never done a presentation like this, especially to a group of people that I don't know personally. So it's a little worrisome. I'm a little bit anxious. So I apologize if that carried off here. But
it was amazing. It's really interesting the things you have done. So thank you for showing us.
Yeah. Like I said, this is the future. Eventually, it'll all be like this. But for now, I think this is the closest to 100% accuracy that we can get at the moment.
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me, but I think the cool thing was this brilliance. It sort of solves the challenge of interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we have all these researchers that are experts within their fields, and they're all working from their perspective. They're sort of siloed. Yeah. And many of the big questions we're faced with as a society, they need an interdisciplinary approach. Mm-hmm. And what this brilliance does, it sort of takes from many sources and allows for an answer that touches on more things than just, for example, physics or economics. Mm-hmm. So very cool.
Mm-hmm. The inference is what I'm really proud of, and that I think is something that you don't see a lot in other models. So I've had situations, it doesn't happen all the time, where a response will come up, and there was an instance where a friend asked me a question, very technical scientific question about something called a CEBR3 crystal that generates gamma waves. No idea what it was. And one of the sentences that it ended on was, although this was not specifically mentioned in the context, I believe that you could use, and there was a number of scientific terminology in terms of things I have no understanding of, in this application of amplifying the ability of CEBR3 crystals to generate gamma waves. And it inferred that, and I've never seen models do that, where they say, although this wasn't mentioned in the context, and then it provides something that wasn't there. As far as I know, I have not seen a model do that. So I think this is pushing the model to the smartest that it's going to be right now. And of course, they have things that are incredibly light years ahead. OpenAI said today they've been providing their models to the US government ahead of time for review and approval and all that. So it's only going to get smarter. And hopefully they realize, I don't know how they're saying it's going to be 18 months before the next iteration of GPT comes out, according to the interview that came out today. So that leaves a lot of time when people still need to be able to use this for academic research and cross-disciplinary research. And just like with the UAP project and Project Hessdalen, we need people that understand AI, we need people that understand physics, we need people that understand magnetism, we need people that understand astronomy. Like, all these disciplines have to come together, just like you were saying, to answer the questions in the world that we can't solve the way that it's structured right now. So thank you. Thank you for letting me present, Fred. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, I think we are, if none of you are going to unmute yourself and come with a question, then we'll end it now.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody's time. My emails at the bottom there, if you would like a link, send me an email with the email address that you'd like to use, and I'll add you to the Streamlit list, and you can use it as much as you'd like. And please provide feedback, shoot me an email, and let me know what you think after a few days or a week or two.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Then I have to find that button again. Where is that?
The record.
Yeah. Stop.